Thank you very much for conducting this hearing. I do have a statement that I'll make available for the record. I share your concern about the future of journalism. Our metropolitan newspapers are our prime source of journalism, of investigative reporting, of news sources for radio, TV, and the internet, and they're going out of business. They're closing their operations, they're slashing their staffs. You gave a list of those newspapers that either have terminated their traditional operations or are in bankruptcy. If I could just add one more to that list, and that's the Baltimore Sun, my hometown paper, that's in bankruptcy and is in danger of whether it can stay in business or not. It's clear to me that our newspapers are a check on not just local government and the federal government, but on corporations, on businesses, on community activities. It's a prime part of our democratic system. And yes, I do think that Google and Yahoo and blogs are important. I do. But when it comes to in-depth reporting and the source for much of our news that we see echoed in blogs and on the internet, we rely upon the news bureaus of our newspapers. It's important to have timely video, as you point out, of a particular news event. And analytical journalism is important, but investigative journalism, where we get most of our breaking news, comes from our local newspaper bureaus, and we're in danger of losing that. Newspaper reporters forge relationships with people. They build a network which creates avenues to information. It's essential to a free and democratic society. A 2003 study published by Law, Economics, and Organization found a direct relationship between the free circulation of a daily newspaper per person and corruption. The lower the circulation, the higher the corruption. Princeton University reported on the closure of the Cincinnati Post that local elections were less competitive. And I quote from that report: "If voter turnout, a broad choice of candidates, and accountability for incumbents are important to democracy, we side with those who lament newspapers' decline." Simply put, the current model doesn't work. Advertising, as you've pointed out, Mr. Chairman, is not the type of financial support that papers traditionally could rely upon. Subscriptions are significantly reduced because people are getting their news off of the internet or from the radio or TV. By early 2008, this is before the current recession really started, 59% of our newspapers had reduced their staffs, 61% had less space devoted to news, and over half of our states did not have a news coverage of what was happening directly in Congress. They had to rely on third-party sources. So I introduced the Newspaper Revitalization Act to find a different way. As you point out, we need to explore different economic models. It was filed in an effort to create a national debate as to how we can preserve our local news operations. My legislation uses the 501c3 model, similar to what a church would use or what an educational institution would use, a public broadcasting, and other nonprofits. Now, this may be an advantage for some papers to be able to continue. Why? Because it gives an avenue for local supporters, whether they be individuals, whether they be foundations, whether they be in educational institutions, to be able to come together under a 501c3 model and preserve the tradition of their local newspaper. Let me say what it doesn't do. What it does do is allow the communities to come together to save a local newspaper. What it doesn't do, and what I do not support, is government interference with the free press. Government does not interfere with our churches. They are nonprofits. I do not want to see us do anything that could compromise the independence of the newspaper. That's critically important. I also would oppose any government direct bailout to our newspapers. I don't think that's an appropriate way for us to move forward. This bill, my recommendation, would not do that. There are no federal funds. And I might say, most newspapers aren't paying any federal taxes. So by making them a nonprofit, we're not going to be giving up any government revenues. The only restriction would be that they could not endorse specific candidates. They still could editorialize, as I think they should. It gives a choice to a community to preserve their local paper, and I do encourage the other suggestions that have been made. Thomas Jefferson, a man who was vilified by newspapers daily, once said, "If I had a choice between government without newspapers and newspapers without government, I wouldn't hesitate to choose the latter." Like Jefferson, I believe that a well-informed public is essential to our democratic society. We need to save our community newspapers and the investigative journalism that they provide, and I believe this hearing is an important step forward in exploring how to do that.